Hey there, emotionless robot people. The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk about an episode of Green Lantern, the animated series titled Cold Fury. If you haven't seen the episode and you don't like spoilers, go watch it while I sum up the plot of the episode for those who don't want to watch it or don't mind spoilers. Then I'll get into the review itself. So the Lady Scientist Guardian, she attempts to use secret Guardian power to stop the Anti-Monitor and the Manhunters, but she is destroyed. Then we find out Aya isn't dead. Yay! But she picks now, in the middle of a war, to try to discuss her feelings with Razor. Boo! Razor says he doesn't really feel anything for Aya. Boo! Aya can't process this, and after asking Razor what she should do, seriously, boo! He says he would shut everything out except for the mission at hand. So that's exactly what she does. She becomes an emotionless, very scary conduit of Green Lantern energy, and she kicks the Anti-Monitor's butt. Then she takes all the Manhunters, misguided children as far as she's concerned, and goes away with her new army. She no longer needs her organic friends. Cue very scary credits. Okay, so it might seem like a bit of a cheat to kill off Aya as a big dramatic moment in the previous episode, only to immediately bring her back here. But I would counter that her air quotes death actually did further the plot in a major way, and not just for this episode, but for the entire season, obviously. Her apparent death shakes Razor enough that he feels he needs to tamp down his emotions and tell Aya that he doesn't love her, which prompts her into becoming the new big bad of the season. So if you had no idea what was coming in this next leg of the season, I could see how you might call this a cheat, but I don't really see any other way that they could have progressed with this story without a fake out death. So it doesn't bother me. I've seen much worse instances of death being undone in comics. Now, while what Razor does is frustrating if you're invested in this relationship, it is consistent with his tendency to internalize everything and run away from his problems. In the past, his wife dies. Instead of moving through all 5 stages of grief, he gets stuck on anger. Now, he doesn't even get that far. He just denies his feelings for Aya so that if she dies again, for realsies this time, then he can pretend it won't break him apart like it almost did this time and like it did when his wife died before. Now, I've been pretty cool on the progression of Aya and Razor's relationship throughout the series. It's not that I'm against the two of them getting together. I actually think they're pretty cute together. I like the idea of them together, but some of the bumps on the road to this relationship have kind of annoyed me to the point that I just want to see them both admit their feelings and move on. But even keeping that in mind, Razor's actions make complete sense based on what he's done before. This is the perfect example of character informing plot, which is how stories should go. This could have very easily been a case of the writers wanting Aya to go evil and finding some cheap way to accomplish that, but the way they did it felt much more organic. And if you felt more invested in the relationship than I did, then now you have much more invested in the superhero aspect of this show. You like Aya, so you don't want to see the rest of the crew of the Interceptor succeed too much, but you also don't want to see Aya be evil. Up until now, I really didn't care about the Anti-Monitor himself. I liked the individual episodes that were part of the Anti-Monitor arc, but he himself was just kind of there, like a force of nature. You don't consider tornadoes interesting, and neither do you really consider this version of the Anti-Monitor interesting. But now, even if you didn't care about Razor and Aya getting together, you're almost certainly more invested in the superhero stuff than you were before. Aya's turn to the dark side reminds me of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer series. Spoilers for a show that started 20 years ago if you haven't seen it. But this really reminded me of seasons 2 and 6 of that show, where you've got a fake out villain that you think is the real threat, and then one of the good guys turns bad, and then you see that that's kind of been developing that whole season even if you didn't notice it at first. I do like how Aya's face heel turn addresses the concerns I had a few episodes back about how apparently some robots are okay to kill and others are not. This series has been really dicey on that, like when Hal substituted an innocent robot to be murdered by the Guardians so that he could rescue Aya, or how Aya herself, not too long ago, decided that because she is willing to grow and change beyond her programming, that she should not be killed, but the Manhunters should. Honestly, her taking them under her wing makes much more sense, considering she is also a robot. At this point, I doubt we will see much more of the Manhunters beyond being the hand of the Queen, but we at least finally get a robot freedom thing in a series that makes sense. So that's all I have for this review. Really excited to see what else is going on in the series. I've seen all the episodes, but even though I remember many aspects of the series, like Aya turning evil, I had forgotten much of how we got to those moments. So I am in many ways still along for the ride here. So come back next weekend where I will be talking about another episode of this series. And check me out during the week where I sometimes discuss other things. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.